In this video, I'm going to show you the most powerful way to reprogram your subconscious mind to attract that of love or abundance in your life in a very powerful way. I'm going to show you step by step how I did it, how I went from working my 9-to-5 job where my brain, my mind was completely wired for that of having a 9-to-5 job, feeling very stuck in my past patterns that I was living in. And I'm going to show you how I bridged that gap, how I reprogrammed my mind, how I, in a positive way, brainwashed myself for love, for success, for everything I've created in my life now. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it yourself. Now, the first thing to understand about this is that of knowing that your mind, your subconscious mind, runs 95% of your life. So literally 95% of our life, the reflection we get in our life, is because of our subconscious mind. Now, subconscious literally means underneath the conscious. Like, we're not conscious of it. So we may have, for example, always been told what to do growing up by our parents or by our family dynamics. And there may be a part of us that feels subconsciously familiar with that. And maybe there's also a part of us that we don't really believe in ourselves because subconsciously we haven't been either taught to believe in ourselves or we haven't just felt worthy. Well, subconsciously, because those beliefs are predominant, what ends up happening is that we feel familiar with those emotions, familiar with those stories, familiar with those beliefs, and therefore we attract ourselves into a reality where our thoughts, feelings, and actions are in complete alignment with those subconscious beliefs. So first off, realize that we get in life a reflection of who we are being. Who we are being. A lot of times people will focus on what they want. They'll focus on love. They'll focus on abundance. But if they're not embodying that energy, if they're not literally feeling it inside of their body, then they're not going to allow themselves to then see it as an outer reflection, because the outer reflection is simply a reflection of the inner energy. So the one big shift for me was when I started understanding my subconscious beliefs. Your beliefs create your reality. And when I started to become aware of a lot of my subconscious beliefs, a lot of them were rooted in a feeling of not feeling worthy because of earlier childhood things, not having my own freedom. There was also a belief that I have to fight for my own freedom. So ironically enough, that attracted me into a job where the manager was very narcissistic, just like my ex-stepmom, very controlling. That felt familiar. Therefore, I'm in that pattern because it feels familiar. And therefore, felt literally locked inside that reality. I didn't know the way out. I was like, I know I want to be a YouTuber. I know I want to do what I love. I know I don't want to be in a job where there's corporate politics and stuff. But guess what? Growing up, I was literally wired to have a level of corporate politics because growing up it was never fair in the household. The ex-stepmom was narcissistic and mentally would emotionally manipulate my brother and I. So what ended up happening is I had a story that people emotionally try to manipulate me. I have to fight for my freedom. Also, there was games that you had to play in order to get what you wanted. In the same way of having that 9-to-5 job, there were games I had to play in order to get the days off that I wanted, in order to get vacation days that I wanted. It was a game because it was a game growing up and it felt familiar. And that was the subconscious belief that I had. Ironically enough as well, I know I've shared this in many of my videos when it comes to the whole, the manager at Nordstrom's that was just like my ex-stepmom. I always had a woman in my life that was trying to control me, either an ex-girlfriend or a manager, until I released the subconscious belief around women trying to control me. And honestly, it was until I forgave my ex-stepmom. I had to forgive my ex-stepmom to stop that energetic pattern. And I think a lot of times this goes overlooked, but we subconsciously stay trapped in realities of either lack, limitation, lack of love, these kind of realities that are equal to our belief system. We stay locked in those realities until many times we forgive. We forgive someone else. And a lot of times it has to do with forgiving mom or dad or your caretakers growing up. Because what happened is there's a belief around maybe that kind of person or that kind of archetype. It could be around feminine or masculine energy. There's a belief there, and that subconscious belief of not forgiving and having some type of resentment keeps the energy alive to where we can't allow anything new in. I couldn't attract myself to a reality to where there wasn't a woman trying to control me until I forgave my ex-stepmom. And I forgave her, and that changed everything. And the way that I forgave her is I realized that my ex-stepmom, who was in my life from 7 to 15, she had an abusive dad in her life. Her dad was like an alcoholic who was mentally, physically, and emotionally abusive to her. So she learned those patterns, and then she would project them onto my brother and I. And that became familiar for her, and that's why she was the way she was. Now, it doesn't make it right, but it does help me understand her more, because understand, people are always doing the best they can with what they got. People are doing the best they can with the level of consciousness that they're at. And if somebody has done something horrible to you, imagine what they had to go through to think that that's even okay. A lot of times it's a lot of trauma. That doesn't make it right, but it does help you understand more. And when you understand more, it makes it a lot easier to forgive. So when I forgave my ex-stepmom, and I also realized that, like, growing up, the things that I went through actually led to my spiritual awakening. The pain actually served a positive purpose because it led to my spiritual awakening. It led to me being way more woke, I guess you could say. And it led to me actually, I may not be on YouTube sharing my concepts, be like a teacher doing seminars and retreats and events, if it weren't for that craziness back from 7 to 15 years old that I repeat in many, many videos that I am very aware that I talk about, because I make many, many videos on YouTube, just so you know. Awareness! So, the reason I mention it like this is because our brain is addicted to the familiar. And brainwashing ourselves in a positive way means becoming aware of the familiar energies that are active. Become aware and take ownership as well for the patterns and the how we think, feel, and act. Become aware of that familiar energy that we stay in. We continue to try to recreate the same childhood dynamics subconsciously in our adult life now. So if people have blocks to attracting love, or they're only attracting toxic guys or women or whatever, it could be because those emotions, those energies have been familiarized. And the key is becoming aware of those emotions, bringing the subconscious into the conscious. And the thing I'd really encourage you to look at are, what are your predominant beliefs about life? What are your predominant beliefs or stories about love, about abundance? Because those predominant stories are on autopilot. I remember for a long time I was selling women's shoes. I know I've never told that story before, but yeah, I used to sell women's shoes at Nordstrom's and then at Barney's. I'm just kidding, I know I've said it before. But one of the things that I remember doing is I read this one book that's called The Science of Getting Rich by Walter Wattles, I think. And it completely changed my perspective about abundance and money. And one of the things it talked a lot about was gratitude and feeling grateful for gratitude is a way of unifying you with the higher mind, in a way. Now, one thing I realized is I worked a sales commission job that was somewhat competitive. I work with other sales employees, and based on in order to keep our job, we have to sell a certain amount that's dependent on the average of what everyone is selling. So there's very much a competitive mindset. Now, in The Science of Getting Rich, it talks about something called the competitive mindset versus the creative mindset. And I remember going into work one day, and I've always had the competitive mindset, because it's like, if somebody else has a good sale, it's like, shit, I could have had that good sale, and that sale gets used against me, because if that person has a good day and I don't, it goes against the average and all this stuff. And there were two things that really shifted for me. One was I started to have what is called a creative mindset, where I don't I can use someone else's prior success as a reference experience to actually know that today's a good day, and I could also sell that much. So if someone had a good sale, I'd be like, oh, a lot of customers are buying today. And I would use that as a creative mindset. There's an infinite amount of there's an infinite intelligence. There's an infinite amount of abundance. Someone else's abundance does not mean scarcity for me. And when I started to have that belief, it was amazing the level of abundance that came through. Even on YouTube, making videos on YouTube. There's times on YouTube back in the day, like 3 years ago, and even, I'm sure at different levels it happens now, but where I'd make videos on certain concepts, and then I would see other people that make the same exact videos that I would make, and I'd be like, oh, there's scarcity here because people are modeling what I'm doing, and I would feel like frustrated with it. And then eventually I realized, wait, that's a competitive mindset. Even if I make a video and it inspires other people to make videos, that's a positive thing because the information is reaching more people. Creative mindset. Now imagine having a creative mindset with love. Imagine you have a scarcity mindset. This one person was my soulmate, meant to be, and it's not working out right now, so I have to hold on to it and try to keep it, because if I let it go, then I'm going to lose my sense of love. I'm going to lose my one shot at love. And the thing to realize about this is that is a scarcity mindset. Instead of realizing that there is an infinite amount of love that is out there, and there's other connections you can make. There's 7 billion people out there in the world. But if you live within the paradigm of scarcity, of there's only this much love in the world, and I need to force it to work with maybe a toxic relationship, or force it to work with what they call one-itis. One-itis is where you have one person that you start dating, and you put them on a pedestal, and it's like, it needs to work out with them. Creates a lot of resistance. That is scarcity. Scarcity mindset. And that will create that belief then generates, and what is that in that mindset? It's really a belief. There's a belief that there's an infinite number of abundance out there. And guess what? Then it's like you're in an abundant state. And even in love, you're in an abundant state where you realize that you're not conditional. You're not attached to one outcome. An abundance. And that abundance is attractive. Even when it comes to money. If there's scarcity, there's competition. Oh my gosh, I gotta like claim everything I have, and I gotta not be happy for other people's success. But instead, if you're like happy for other people's success, you then rewire that level of abundance for yourself. I did this recently. I'm going to tell this story. I'm not saying this to brag or anything like that, but I was recently at a Tony Robbins, this thing called Business Mastery. It's like this workshop online. It's like this $10,000 workshop online for 5 days, right? And I'm watching it, and it's Tony, and it's like all this team and stuff like that. And there's this one time where they come up, they do this thing where it's actually a really good cause. There's like sex trafficking, and there's this at a certain point he has this thing where he's promoting raising money for this organization that breaks down and like finds sex trafficking networks and takes them down. And he's like promoting for that fundraiser. And when he's doing it, they're sharing all these stories. It's very emotional, and there's this counter, there's this ticker that keeps going up. And this ticker that keeps going up is like of people donating to this cause. And I remember watching it, there was over $1.2 million that was raised, which every $500 is a kid being saved. So I remember listening to this, and I remember thinking like, well, I have my own ways that I like donate money and you know, put money into collective consciousness that like adds value and stuff, but one of the things he said I thought was very interesting about this, and I'll tell you a funny little story about it too. But one of the things about it is when you're able to give, it reprograms your subconscious mind that there's always more. And I do believe that, because what I ended up doing is I'm watching all these people do it, and I'm like, well, I'm abundant, like why don't I donate to this? And it was funny because towards the end, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to donate. And it's funny because I've always like looked up to Tony and everything. You know, he's like Tony Robbins, one of the most well-known like motivational public speakers of like all time. You know, and I was like, you know what, I'll donate. So towards the end of that, I donated, and it was funny because by doing it, I felt like not only did it feel good for the cause that I was putting it towards, but I could feel that I was kind of reprogramming my subconscious mind to like giving feels good. Giving feels good. It's funny. He also was talking about a story about how he bought his mom like a house, and he bought her a house on like in Huntington Beach, and that's where she lived out the rest of her life. And it was like this big emotional thing where he like went and got this house and gave it to his mom, and his mom was crying. And by giving, he reprogrammed his subconscious mind that there's always more than enough. And funny enough, he said that story. And recently, I've done something where I've reached out to my own mom, and I am like helping her get a place in Vegas and stuff like that. Not saying that to brag or anything. I'm just saying I recently did something like that, and I was like, oh yeah, that does feel really good to do, because it makes a difference. And it's like, I know it's going to make a big difference in my mom's life. It's going to allow her to like get her ducks in order. She's been living in like a toxic situation for like 5 years with this guy that's like, she's like a roommate that's like super toxic. I'm happy to help her get out of that situation, but it feels really good to be able to do that. And in a similar way, to give to this organization felt really good. I could tell I was reprogramming my mind as I was doing it and giving. But it was funny. It was like Tony read my name, and he pronounced my name correct, which I thought was cool too. He's like, Aaron Downey just saved 4 kids' lives. And because he's saying that, like, you know, it's also in getting other people to like donate too, so it has like this positive effect. But it was a funny moment for me, because he's like, as he's saying that, I was like, oh, I could use that as a testimonial or something. Tony Robbins says Aaron Doughty's content is so good, it saved 4 kids' lives. So it was like this funny thing where I ended up, it was this positive association for me. Not only did it feel good because I was giving, I was helping these kids and stuff like that, but it also felt cool because somebody that I like look up to, like, you know, there was like a level of significance, I guess, or like recognition there. And that's probably part of the psychology behind even saying it, because it was getting a lot of other people to want to do it too, because Tony Robbins could read off your name, you know? It was kind of funny. But the reason I say that is from doing that, from the energy of giving, I could feel, I was literally reprogramming my mind that there's more out there, that there's more abundance out there. And I literally feel like I'm going to be attracting more abundance. This happened just recently. And it's something that, like, as you give, you will realize you're reprogramming your mind for abundance and for success. So with that, it's about not having conditions, about understanding as well how your subconscious mind works. Now, let me give you a game plan of how to really reprogram your subconscious mind in an extremely powerful way. So I've explained a little bit about this before, but brainwave activities, we have that of the beta state. Beta is like the awake, aware state. Alpha is like a very relaxed state, like when you're watching television, you're in an alpha state. And then theta state is more like the subconscious mind can be influenced, daydreaming state, right as you're like in different states of sleep, you're in theta state. And then delta state is completely out of the frame and you can't even see me, because delta state is like deep sleep and it really doesn't apply to this. So those are the 3 states of brainwave activities. Now, here's the thing. When you are 7 years old and below, you're pretty much just in theta state. You're in theta state for like almost the whole time. You're absorbing the belief of your parents, you're absorbing the belief of your environment, and that's where you are. All right? Then as you get to like 12 to 13 years old, or like maybe it's like 8 to 10 years old, you start getting more in alpha state. Alpha state is like very relaxed. This is where you start developing more of your personality and you start becoming a little bit more rigid with your beliefs. Then as you get into teenage years, you're like beta, you start caring what people think of shit, and you're like between beta and alpha. All right? Now the thing is people try creating change in their life. They're like, well, I'm over here in beta state. I'm going to think of better thoughts. I'm going to think better thoughts. I'm going to think about what I want. I want money. I want love. I want this. I want that. Okay, Aaron says I need to reprogram my mind for abundance, so I'm going to be abundant. I'm abundant. Now here's the thing. To reprogram your mind, the key is actually getting back into theta state. Now how do we get into theta state? Theta state is when you're in meditation. When you're in meditation, you get to deep levels of theta. And from that place, you can feel the energy as if you're that version of you, because you get life who you're being, the abundant version of you, the one version of you that's in a loving relationship, the version of you that's doing what you love for a living. That version of you could feel grateful for in a theta state, and you will reprogram your subconscious mind for that. Also, 20 minutes before you fall asleep at night, the window to feel the energy as if it exists now. And 20 minutes when you wake up in the morning, feel it as if it exists now, as if you are that version of you, and see yourself as that version of you. And that is the way that you're really going to influence your subconscious mind. A little bit in alpha state, you can do it as well, but in beta state, it's very hard to reprogram your subconscious mind. So these are the 2 states that you could do that in. Now, also, at the same time, it's about understanding that you are already magnetic. You are and have the energy within you to feel the energy as if you are that version of you now. And the key is tuning to it like a radio dial. There's already a version of you that is abundant. There's already a version of you that's in a loving relationship. It already exists. How can you tune to that reality? How can you tune to that version of you? That's what I did to become a full-time YouTuber. I literally took on the identity and I gave myself permission to be it. And in meditation, I downloaded the energy. And action, every single day, I was being that version of me. So energetically, that was my dominant vibration. That became my dominant reality. I know dominant to many of you spiritual people are like, oh, it sounds like it's a hard word, but that became my dominant reality. And if you want to make your side hustle your dominant reality, you got to embody that energy 100% and be it. Write me out. Now, I do have something, if you haven't heard of this, called the MAP. The MAP is the magnetic activation process for activating this dream reality, a step-by-step process of reprogramming your subconscious mind so that you can literally be it. If you want to check out the MAP process, go ahead and click the link below. Watch that video. It's a free training video that'll show you step-by-step how to use MAP, the the magnetic activation process, or go to aarondowdy.com/map, M-A-P. Check that video out, and it'll show you step-by-step exactly how to create that level of transformation within yourself. And if you want to learn, by the way, the most effective way, step-by-step process of attracting love, period, that video is one of my most powerful videos. Check it out right here. Attracting love is not something that we attract. It is something that is reflected. It is reflected back to us depending on how much inner self-love we feel inside of our bodies. And like that meditation I was telling you about, it's because you're feeling